So I want you to think about the absolute smartest person at your workplace. You know the exact one I'm talking about, right?
Oh, absolutely. The one who holds all the answers.
Right. The person who, like, knows every forgotten password, who understands exactly how the complete spaghetti code of your daily operations actually holds together.
The one everyone runs to when a server goes down or a major client is frantically calling on line one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But imagine you walk into the office on, I don't know, random Tuesday, and you get the news. That indispensable genius won the Mega Millions lottery last night, threw their phone into a lake, and they are never, ever coming back.
Yeah, that is basically the ultimate nightmare scenario for any manager. I mean, it's a sudden catastrophic loss of institutional knowledge.
It really is.
And, while the lottery things is a traumatic example, this exact same loss happens in much quieter ways every single day.
Yeah, through like resignations or retirements.
Right, or even just someone taking a 2-week vacation and suddenly everything grinds to a halt.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a stack of consulting sources and really analyzing a concept that completely flips standard business thinking on its head.
It really does.
We're going to explore why the business world's absolute obsession with the indispensable employee, our lottery winner, basically why that is actually a massive blinking red vulnerability.
Yeah, and more importantly, how a life-saving philosophy pulled straight from the aviation industry offers, well, a permanent fix to this.
Right. So the core premise we pulled from these sources is it's a really profound shift in perspective.
It is true organizational success, like the kind that can actually scale, grow, and, survive a crisis.
The kind that lasts.
Exactly. It doesn't come from hiring superhuman people with perfect memories. It comes from building extraordinary systems.
Because any business relying on a hero to save the day is inherently fragile.
Highly fragile.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we're saying we can't rely on human memory and we can't just hire brilliant people and assume they'll, remember how to do their jobs perfectly under stress.
Which they won't.
Right, they just won't.
Yeah.
So we need to understand what actually replaces that memory, and that leads us straight to the runway.
Yeah. Aviation provides the ultimate countermodel to this whole hero-employee mindset. I mean, consider a commercial airline pilot.
Okay.
You're looking at someone with intense, continuous training. Like, a senior captain might have 20 years of experience. They might have logged 15,000 flight hours in the exact same model of aircraft.
So they know the machine inside and out.
Totally.
I mean, they could fly the plane in their sleep.
Figuratively, of course.
Right, figuratively. But despite all of that mastery, that pilot uses a printed or, digital checklist for every single takeoff.
Wow.
Every landing, every abnormal procedure, every emergency. It is entirely non-negotiable. See, that's wild to me because, I mean, if I had done a complex task 15,000 times, I might actually be a little offended if someone handed me a piece of paper to make sure I did it right.
You'd feel micromanaged.
Yeah, be like, I know what I'm doing. But the sources highlight a really deep psychological reason for this practice.
Yeah, it has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of skill or a lack of knowledge. It's actually a profound systemic acknowledgement of human nature.
Right, because we aren't perfect.
Exactly. The aviation industry recognizes that human memory, while, incredibly powerful, is inherently unpredictable.
Yeah.
It's highly vulnerable to environmental factors like fatigue, stress, a sudden distraction in the cockpit.
A minor radio interruption from air traffic control.
Right, or simply the pressure of time. Any of these can cause a highly trained brain to just suddenly drop a critical piece of information.
And the sources point out something counterintuitive about this, too.
Yeah.
Because you would naturally assume that more experience makes you, less prone to those memory drops.
Yeah, you'd think so. But experience can actually make professionals far more vulnerable.
Which is crazy to think about.
Well, familiarity creates dangerous assumptions, right? When you perform a task repeatedly, your brain builds neural pathways that make the action feel effortless.
Right, muscle memory.
Yeah. It breeds this subconscious mindset of, well, I've done this 1,000 times. I don't need to actively verify the steps.
It's just like driving your daily commute.
Yes. Perfect example.
You get so confident, so used to the specific turns and the traffic lights that your brain basically goes on autopilot.
You bypass active cognitive engagement entirely.
Exactly. You're physically driving the car, but mentally you are like already at your desk planning your morning meeting.
Yeah.
And that is exactly when you run a red light or you completely miss your highway exit.
Because you didn't lack the mechanical skill to drive the car.
Right. Your brain just assumed it had the situation handled based on past success.
So Aviation asks a very simple, very structural question to combat this. Why depend on memory when we can depend on a system?
Wow.
By standardizing the physical checklist, they completely remove the burden of memory from the pilot.
But, implementing that in a corporate office is where things get really complicated.
Oh, definitely.
Because if a manager suddenly tells their team, hey, we're going to start using checklists, the team is going to picture like a sticky note with a basic grocery list.
Right. They'll view it as a patronizing administrative burden. Like, why are you making me do this?
Yeah. And that fundamental misunderstanding is where organizations fail.
Yeah.
Right? They confuse a simple to-do list with a standardized operational system.
Exactly. The sources detail how a proper checklist isn't just one single piece of paper. It is a cohesive family of tools.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it's this whole toolkit designed to standardize performance across every level of an organization. And it's broken down into 5 distinct parts.
Yeah, let's analyze this checklist family, because each tool serves a very specific psychological and operational purpose.
Okay, lay it on me.
So at the very top, forming the absolute foundation, is the SOP, the standard operating procedure.
Right.
This document answers the fundamental structural question like, what is our standard way of doing this?
Because without that foundation, you just end up with chaos.
Complete chaos.
Like, if you have 3 different supervisors training new hires and there's no SOP, Supervisor A teaches the process one way.
Yeah.
Supervisor B teaches, like, a shortcut they invented 3 years ago.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Right. And then Supervisor CC just makes it up based on how they feel that morning. So you no longer have a unified company standard. You essentially have 3 competing subcultures operating under one roof.
Exactly. The SOP prevents that fragmentation by, defining the organizational rulebook. It removes personal preference from the equation entirely.
Okay, but wait. If I already have an SOP that tells everyone the standard, building a separate work instruction, which is the second tool in the family, that feels redundant to me.
A lot of people think that.
I mean, you're just asking for an uprising from veteran employees who already feel like there's way too much paperwork.
The friction with veteran employees is very real, I'll give you that. But the distinction between the two is vital.
Okay, how so?
Think of the SOP as the map. It shows you the destination and the general route you need to take.
Yeah.
But the work instructions, those are the turn-by-turn navigation.
Okay. So the SOP is the policy, but the work instruction is the actual user manual.
Yes, exactly. So an SOP might state, submit a monthly expense report to the finance department for approval by the 5th of the month.
Simple enough.
Right. But the work instruction details which specific portal to log into, which drop-down menu to cook for travel expenses versus client dinners.
Which file formats are accepted for the receipt uploads.
Exactly. And exactly whose email address the final notification goes to. It removes all ambiguity at the ground execution level.
Because things change. Like, software updates happen.
Internal portals change all the time.
Yeah, and even a veteran employee can forget a minor routing detail if they only do it once a month.
Right. So the work instruction handles the granular how.
Got it. Okay, so moving down the hierarchy, the third tool is the daily checklist. And this kind of bridges the gap between knowing what to do in theory and actually executing it in practice under the pressure of a busy Tuesday.
Yeah, because knowing the standard and remembering to execute every single piece of it are 2 entirely different cognitive processes.
Right.
Think about the opening routine of a retail store.
Okay.
The individual tasks aren't complicated. Turn on the display lights, count the cash register, unlock the front doors, boot up the point-of-sale system.
Nothing crazy.
But if an employee is distracted by a personal phone call,
which happens,
and they forget to boot up the point-of-sale system, the entire morning is disrupted the moment the very first customer walks in.
So the daily checklist ensures the physical execution actually matches the company's intention.
Yes. You essentially make the invisible steps visible.
Right. And then to verify that execution, the fourth tool is quality control.
The checklist after the checklist.
I like that.
Quality control shifts the organizational question from what should we do to did we actually do it?
So mechanically, what does that look like?
It might look like a manager pulling a random sample of 3 completed work instructions a week just to audit them.
Okay.
And the purpose isn't punishment. The purpose is finding the error internally within the safety of your own walls before the customer ever experiences it.
Makes total sense.
Mm.
Finally, the fifth tool in the family brings us right back to our lottery winner from the very beginning.
The handover process.
Yes.
This is the mechanism for knowledge transfer. If your finance director quits and the specific sequence for, say, running payroll was stored entirely in their brain.
The company is instantly paralyzed.
Completely. A robust handover process ensures that when the person leaves the building, the operational knowledge stays in the building.
You aren't just handing over a job title or a set of keys.
No, you are handing over a fully documented, functional system.
It's an incredibly logical framework. But, business isn't a sterile environment like a flight deck.
Definitely not.
It's messy, people are stressed, and things move fast. But the sources actually provide some really grounded case studies across entirely different industries to show how these tools survive contact with reality.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is the symptoms of a missing system look different depending on the industry, but the underlying disease is exactly the same.
Exactly. Take the restaurant industry, for example.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You visit a new place on a Friday night, and you get an amazing, perfectly cooked burger.
Right. Best you ever had.
Right. So the following Friday, you go back, you bring a friend, you talk the place up. But this time, the burger is cold, the meat is overcooked, and the sauce is just completely wrong.
And as a customer, you don't sit at the table and rationalize like, oh, they must have a different chef working the grill tonight.
No. You just conclude the restaurant went downhill, and you take your money elsewhere.
Right. The restaurant does not have a culinary talent problem. It has a systems problem.
Yeah.
Relying on the individual memory of whatever chef happens to be on shift guarantees wild fluctuations in quality.
So a rigorous recipe checklist and like a strict plating SOP ensures a consistent customer experience.
Exactly. The goal isn't to force identical robot chefs to work in a kitchen. The goal is to ensure the customer receives the exact value they paid for, regardless of who is working.
And the stakes get even higher in the logistics and manufacturing case study.
Oh, massively higher.
The sources describe this warehouse operator who's rushing to meet a deadline, and in their hurry, they skip one tiny receiving scan on a pallet of raw materials.
Right, and it wasn't malicious.
No, they were just stressed and trying to save like 30 seconds. But because that single step wasn't verified by a daily checklist, the materials are physically in the building.
But the inventory management software thinks they're out of stock.
Exactly. Which creates a massive cascading failure.
Yeah, because then the automated manufacturing system halts the assembly line the next week, assuming it doesn't have the parts.
Right, so production is delayed, shipping schedules are missed, and clients are furious. All because one human brain dropped one tiny detail under pressure.
It perfectly illustrates how memory and informal processes just shatter under pressure. And, we see this exact same fragility in corporate environments, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at a finance department during the dreaded month-end close. Frequently, this massively critical process rests entirely on the shoulders of one senior accountant.
Yep. They know all the undocumented quirks of the legacy spreadsheets.
Right. They know which specific reports to pull from the database first, and they know the informal chain of command for getting approvals.
And if that senior accountant gets the flu on the 29th of the month, the stress levels go through the roof.
Total panic.
The department is in total chaos. They're like,
Sure.
Where is the reconciliation file? Why doesn't this balance?
You've essentially built a multi-million-dollar bridge, and all the weight is resting on one single, very stressed pillar.
Wow, yeah.
The process isn't owned by the company. It's owned by that individual's memory.
And the final case study from the sources, this one hits close to home for anyone who has ever navigated a corporate onboarding process in HR.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So one employee starts on day one and receives a fully configured laptop, a welcome lunch with their team, and immediate access to their email.
A great first day.
Great first day. But another employee starts a month later under a different manager. They spend their first 4 days sitting at an empty desk with no computer, unable to access the company network.
Feeling completely alienated.
Yeah, wondering if they made a huge mistake taking the job.
And the psychological impact on that new hire is immediate. It often leads to early turnover. But if you look at the pattern across these examples, food service, logistics, corporate finance, and human resources.
Four completely different sectors.
Right, operating at totally different speeds with different types of professionals, yet they all suffer from the exact same root cause.
Undocumented knowledge leading to wildly inconsistent execution.
Exactly.
But, despite these obvious benefits, despite the fact that literally no one wants Kohlbergers, stalled assembly lines, or alienated new hires, people still heavily resist implementing SOPs and checklists.
Oh, there is massive cultural resistance.
Yeah.
It's primarily driven by ego and a fundamental misunderstanding of what a system actually does to a professional's daily workflow.
Okay, but play devil's advocate here. If we document every micro step of a process, aren't we just turning smart, highly educated professionals into robots?
That is the pushback everyone gives.
I mean, you're stripping out the need for critical thinking and creativity. You're just telling them, hey, follow the paper.
According to the sources, that is the single biggest misconception. Checklists do the exact opposite.
Really?
They do not replace critical thinking, they actively protect it.
Okay, how does a piece of paper telling me what to do protect my ability to think?
Let's return to the aviation parallel for a second.
Okay.
Imagine that highly experienced pilot, but now they're flying through a massive, unexpected thunderstorm.
Right.
Stress is off the charts, turbulence is severe, alarms are sounding everywhere. In that critical moment, the pilot does not have the cognitive bandwidth to try and remember whether the auxiliary landing lights were switched on.
Or if the flap configurations are set to the exact right degree.
Exactly. Their working memory is entirely consumed by the storm.
Right, they need all their mental processing power just to keep the plane in the air.
So the checklist handles the routine, predictable tasks. It offloads the mundane details from the pilot's working memory into a reliable external system.
Oh, I see.
Because the routine is handled safely by the system, 100% of the pilot's cognitive bandwidth is freed up for high-level judgment. They can focus entirely on analyzing the weather radar, communicating with air traffic control, and making the split-second strategic decisions that only a human brain can make.
That is so true. And applying that directly to the business world completely changes the narrative.
It really does.
I mean, a finance manager shouldn't be burning out their brain trying to remember if they missed a minor reconciliation step on a spreadsheet.
The checklist handles that routine task.
Right. And because the system holds the process, their brain is free to actually analyze the financial performance, to find systemic cost savings.
To do the complex strategic work they were hired for in the first place.
Exactly. An HR manager shouldn't act as a private investigator trying to track down a new hire's missing laptop.
No, absolutely not.
If the checklist handles the IT logistics automatically, the HR manager has the time and energy to actually build company culture.
To mentor that new employee.
Yeah, and to focus on the human element that a checklist can never replicate.
Systems don't eliminate expertise, they elevate it.
So what does this all mean? We understand the tools, right? The SOPs, the work instructions, the handover processes.
Yeah.
We understand the mindset that we are protecting cognitive bandwidth, not creating corporate robots.
Right.
But the final piece of the puzzle is how an organization actually moves from chaos to this aviation level of reliability.
Well, the sources lay out a very clear progression framework. It is essentially the life cycle of organizational maturity, mapping this journey from intense vulnerability to true operational scale.
And there are 4 distinct stages, right?
Yeah, 4 stages.
So stage 1 is where almost every startup or small business begins.
Yeah.
And that's memory.
Yes. People are just relying on what they know.
Right. The founder remembers how to pitch the product. The first hire remembers where the client files are stored. The manager remembers the steps to close the register.
Yeah, it works when you have 5 people in a room.
Yeah, it works fine then. But memory is personal. It is highly inconsistent. And as the company scales, it will inevitably fail.
A business cannot mathematically grow past a certain revenue point if it is trapped in the memory stage.
Which naturally triggers the need for stage 2, the checklist.
This is the intervention phase. You are actively extracting the operational knowledge from the individual's head and making it visible, documented, and accessible to the entire organization.
But that's the hardest phase, right?
Oh, by far, because it requires serious behavior change.
Yeah, overcoming all that cultural resistance. But once you do that, and the checklists become embedded in the daily workflow, you arrive at stage 3, Consistency.
The work is now being done the exact same way every single time, regardless of who punches the clock.
The standard is established and maintained.
Yeah, you get the same quality burger on a Friday as a Tuesday. You get the same accurate, stress-free, month-end financial close,
You get the same welcoming onboarding experience for every single new hire.
which naturally produces the ultimate outcome. Stage 4. Reliability.
The promised land.
Exactly. Reliability transforms the business. Customers know exactly what to expect, which builds deep brand loyalty. Managers trust the operational process entirely, rather than hovering over employees and micromanaging.
That's huge for morale.
It is. And most importantly, the structural load is distributed. The business is no longer vulnerable because it does not depend on one person's flawless memory anymore.
It's an incredible evolution. From memory to checklist to consistency to reliability.
It really frames organizational growth not as this chaotic scramble for talent, but as a deliberate engineering process.
Yeah, it explains why aviation is the safest industry in the world. When they didn't just get lucky, it is engineered to catch human flaws.
It's about engineering human behavior for success, acknowledging our natural cognitive limits, and building structural nets to catch the inevitable drops.
That makes total sense. So to recap the core lessons from our sources today for you listening, do not build heroes in your organization. Build systems. If you have an indispensable employee who hold all the keys, you do not have a superstar. You have a massive single point of failure.
And remember, an undocumented system is just a fancy corporate word for memory.
And memory always fails.
The most grounding quote from the entire deep dive, the one that really anchors this entire philosophy, is this: professionals trust systems, not memory.
It's the perfect takeaway. But before we sign off, there's one final, slightly provocative thought I want you to mull over.
Okay.
We've spent this entire deep dive exploring how documenting routine processes frees up your team's mental bandwidth and creates space for high-level judgment.
It gives them the cognitive freedom to actually think.
Right. But consider this. If you successfully implement all of these tools, if your checklists and SOPs are handling all the expected routine work flawlessly, what are you actively doing to cultivate that newly freed up creativity?
That's a great question.
Right. If the system is managing the predictable day-to-day operations, how is your organization training its people to handle the sudden, unexpected anomalies, those massive storms that can never fit on a checklist?
Because when your indispensable lottery winner leaves, a good system will keep the lights on and the engines running.
But you still need people who have the judgment to navigate in the dark.
Managing the routine is the science of business. Navigating the unexpected is where true leadership begins.
Exactly. So think about your own daily operations. And if you know a colleague or a manager who is currently drowning in memory-based operations, constantly putting out structural fires because someone forgot a crucial step, well, share these insights with them. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time, build smarter.
See you next time.